Yeah, Scott and I have known each other a long time, and on occasion I've stood in for you in the pulpit, and so he'll verify this. But every time I speak, whether it's at a church or a conference or whatever, my prayer is always the same: that we leave different than we came. Right? That's really been my prayer as I've prepped for this. Is that we, meaning myself included, because I'm not just talking to you. If I ask you any question, it's always questions that I'm asking myself. That's kind of my policy, okay? So I always pray that we leave different than when we came. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an uncomfortable question, and I'm going to be deliberately annoying in some respects today, because I want us to be confronted with some things that make us squirm. This is kind of like more of the philosophical part of the program, so to speak, and I kind of look at it as drinking from a philosophical fire hose, okay? So, first question, and I want you to be very honest with yourself. Show of hands, who here in this room truly believes that your life matters in this world? Not just to you, but to the world. I kind of want to see every hand up, because it does. And it's super important that you believe that, because I think too many times we walk through life and we don't believe it. We think that's for other people. But you matter, okay? And I matter. It's leaving here with the understanding of what that does for the impact that you have. And I know Scott mentioned, we use the word impact and all that, and it can kind of become meaningless. And I want to put the meaning back into it a little bit, okay? So I don't have a PowerPoint. I don't want you taking notes. You can go ahead and close down. There will only be one note to take away from this discussion, okay? One. And I'll tell you when it is, and I'll say, write this down. It's not now. Okay. All right. So we all know when our birthday is, right? Everybody in here know when your birthday is, what year you were born, right? Unless your parents lied to you, right? How about your death day? I find it very ironic that we're here and we're talking about, in the context of insurance, right? And we kind of skirt around the issue. We call it life insurance, but we all know the day is coming, right? We're going to die. And so, we don't know that. So we all know how old we are. We know our birthday, but we don't know how young we are. It's because they're measured in two different things. Our age is measured from the start, and our youth is measured from how much you got left, right? So look around the room, we're not all spring chickens, right? Some of us are fall chickens, some of us are winter chickens, right? But we're not all young. And it's just kind of interesting when we look at our life. If you knew when you were going to die, and don't worry, I'm not going to start playing Live Like You Were Dying, okay? It's not going to be one of those cheesy things. But if you knew the day of your death, if you had it on your calendar, would you live your life any differently? And absolutely, okay. So again, I'm very philosophical because these things matter. Scott and I have had many, many deep theological discussions. We don't do that for theory. We do that because it matters, because we actually live out what we believe. You can tell me you believe something, but I'll watch how you live your life. I can tell you I believe something, you're going to watch how I live my life, because that's actually what I believe, right? I know a lot of you are believers in this room as far as your faith, Christianity. One of my favorite passages in Scripture is the guy that comes up to Jesus and he says, "Lord, I do believe. Help my unbelief." What a weird statement. Because what it really means is I believe to this point, right? But I can't live to that point. I can tell you all I want to, but how I live is going to tell you really what I believe. So that's why I asked you that question in the beginning. Do you believe that your life matters? Because you need to believe it. Really believe it, because then you're going to live it out. Okay, so that's kind of where we're going with this. So this discussion here, and I hope I capture you enough to engage, is to give us a very acute awareness of the shortness of our life. Because if it matters, then what you're going to do with it matters, okay? That's what I want us to walk away with. So again, would you live any differently? And I think too many times we think of it in terms of sort of the abstract, right? Like, if I were to tell you, you had 30 years left on your life, would you change any of your behaviors? Probably not. How about 25? How about 20? How about 15? Do I hear a 10? When is your boiling point? When is it the point where you're going to do something different? And then the question is, well, if there is a point, why isn't that point now? Right? Why isn't the point now? And again, I'm talking to myself about this because we kind of put it off and we put it off and we put it off, yet we're here in this room talking about life insurance and death benefits, knowing that it's coming, right? And I just looked it up last week. You guys with the insurance stats can tell me if this is accurate or not. I just Googled it, okay? I'm not a financial or insurance guy. Average life expectancy of a U.S. male as of last week, 73.2 years old. Does that sound right? Female, 79.1. Okay? Of course, you have to ask, why do men die sooner than women? Answer, women. Sorry, I got permission from my wife to say that. All right. So here's the thing, right? Again, I said we're not all spring chickens in this room. I just turned 53 in March, okay? You would call me middle-aged. That'd be fine if I knew more 106-year-olds, right? I'm not middle-aged. I still think I'm 20, but I can tell you, we have this thing in mountain bike racing where we say you reach a point where, unfortunately, your mind will write checks that your body can't cash. I'm kind of at that stage. All right, but that's the expectancy. So this conference is entitled what? You guys have it on your sheets. Somebody shout out the title of the significance of life. Okay. So the significance of life, I believe, starts when we understand how short it is. Right? And once you understand how short it is, then you can start living a life of significance. That's the thing. We have the significance of life, but we all want to live a life of significance. So how are we going to do that? That's my challenge to you. I'd like us to leave tonight thinking of those things that make us uncomfortable, okay? Thinking of the things about how we're going to make a difference in the world with what we've been given. All right, does that make sense? You tracking with me so far? Okay. I want you to squirm a little. I want me to squirm a little. Squirming is good. All right? So this uncertainty that we have, we don't know how long we're going to live, right? Insane people, not insane people, but insane people, which you all are, that creates a tension, right? Because we're left with this tension not knowing when our end will come, where we have to balance living for the moment and then planning for what I call our three futures, which you may not have heard that terminology, our three futures, because we have three of them. We have our earthly future. That's how many years have I got? 73.2. Okay, that's my 20 years, right? That's left. That's our earthly future. We've got our legacy. That's probably what we're going to talk about the most today. Our legacy. That's the future that's still here, but we're gone. We're not here anymore for it. What are you going to be remembered for, right? And then we have our eternity. I'll talk about the first two. I'm happy to talk with you about the third at what I would call snack time discussion at dinner or whatever. But legacy, it's kind of an interesting thing. Who here has heard of Alfred Nobel? Famous for the Nobel what? Nobel Peace Prize, right? But there's Nobel Prizes, right? Anybody know what he invented? TNT. Thank you very much. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite. Here's the thing. He was a chemist. He invented dynamite. Amazing thing. However, it was used for a significant amount of carnage and misery. He received letters from many people, basically calling him a warmonger, saying that his invention has caused countless death and destruction. And somewhere, I forget what age he was, but he looked at that and he said, this is my legacy. And he changed it. And now the first thing you think of when you hear Alfred Nobel. All right. So there is time. You can always shift. You know, if you're not happy with the legacy you're leaving, change it. Right? Change it. So that's what we want to talk about from this point forward. What your decisions do in contributing to those three futures, okay? Your earthly, your legacy, your eternity. That make sense? Where we're going. Okay. So one of the problems that we have, and you know, we're talking about infinite banking, right? The word infinite is kind of interesting. We tend to view our money as finite and our time as infinite. Because again, we kind of don't know it. We can see the money, right? We can see the zeros, we can see the bank account, we can see the numbers. But we don't know how much time we have left. And so in our minds, conceptually, we look at money as finite and our time, money is our money is finite and time is infinite. So what if it were reversed? What if you had the surplus that we're talking about, right? What if all of a sudden you had basically all the money you could possibly need, but you had an understanding that your time is significantly finite? Would that change what you're doing, right? Would it change what you're doing? So it's kind of interesting because we're here to learn how to basically build wealth and all that kind of stuff, which is a surplus. So I'm here to challenge us all on, okay, now that you have your surplus, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it that makes your life matter, that makes it one of significance, right? Now you can write this down. This is the takeaway from this presentation. Your money, your wealth, will only have a purpose when you do. That's it. Your money will only have a purpose when you do. And so I hope we think about that. Purpose. This is, when Scott asked me about a title for this presentation, the first part of it was meaningful wealth, purposeful wealth. So you're learning all these tools to get surplus and all of that kind of stuff. What are you going to do with it? What's the purpose of it, right? So let's start by purpose of money. What's the purpose of money versus the purpose of wealth? Anybody got any ideas?
Money.
Okay. Purpose of money and versus wealth being? Okay. 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 All right. Okay. So let me pose a different definition maybe, or a different purpose. Because I'm approaching this as an entrepreneur, which I'm going to get into the second part, which is to get you a mindset of what a purebred entrepreneur is, because I am not a business person. Do not take business advice from me. Okay? You can take entrepreneurial advice all day long from me, but I am not a businessman. I am an entrepreneur, and there's a difference, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But money lets us buy things. Wealth lets us do things. Okay? So money lets us buy things. Wealth lets us do things. That's really the difference. So with that in mind, and I do want to hear some of your thoughts on it, what do you want to do? One of my favorite coaching questions, and I coach a lot of people, particularly business startups and all that kind of stuff. I love dealing with founder entrepreneurs. They're my favorites just because I resonate with them. But one of my coaching questions that I always ask, probably in session 1, is if you didn't have to work for money, what would you do? So, anybody willing to share? If you had just money wasn't a question, what would you do?
We would invest the rest of our lives in encouraging into marriages couples about God's blueprint.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm on myself, I buy a bunch of rental property.
Okay.
It's the one, and then we had a house in Fort Worth.
Okay. All right. Live out of a suitcase. You travel. Okay. 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 Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
I would travel and be a full teacher / coach.
Okay. There you go. All right. Okay, so you know where my follow-up question is going, right? Ba, 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 say it louder.
Well, aren't you doing it now?
There you go. Right. Right. So we have a thing in the mission field that we joke about. It was an African expression. We were doing a lot of work in Northwest Africa with our hydro mission stuff, and they had a saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So my wife and I always have this this joke as we're going along. I own a tea farm, and it's a ton of work. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of work. Don't invest in a tea farm. Okay. Okay. But we always say, oh, how's it going? I'm eating elephants today. You know, like that's just how it is sometimes, right? But you eat it one bite at a time, you know. So on those things that you would do if money were not an issue, why aren't we taking the steps now? We already just said, look, our time is short. If I go by this statistic and by the numbers they're banking on, I got 20 years. That sucks. 20 years is nothing. It's nothing. So all those things that we say we want to do, you can start doing it. It might not be the biggest, boldest plan you've ever done, but you can take a step, right? Absolutely. So be thinking about that. Okay, so what's a baby step toward whatever it is that you say you would do if you had all the money in the world? Because the problem is, as soon as we say, well, this is what we need, we keep moving the goalpost, right? Kicking the can. Eventually, you're going to kick the bucket, right? I didn't write that. I just kind of came out, but that's the point. So, as you start looking at those things, this is kind of dipping into the mindset of an entrepreneur. You'll hear that thrown around a lot, and entrepreneurs don't think the same way that most people do. A lot of people will say they're entrepreneurs, and they're really not. And we'll kind of get into the differences in just a second. Okay? But any questions, comments, or anything like that so far? Are you squirming a little yet? I hope you are, just a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to come down to is that, we talk about finances, we talk about money, and there's a lot of talk about money, but really time is your only commodity of value in this world. Okay? Time is your only true commodity in this world, period, of any value. We're always trading money for time, but time is the more precious of the two. And ironically, that asset, your time, can only ever be spent. It cannot be saved, cannot be banked, does not earn interest, right? Time is always just a one-way stream. That's it. And so how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend your time making money, or do you want to spend your money freeing up your time? It's really important that you understand that that's what you trade every day in life. Time for money, time for money, time for money. Start learning that the more valuable of the two is your time. I worked in the medical field for 33 years. Just sort of retired. Retired means you hit a financial goal. I just quit. That's different. I thought 20,000 surgeries was enough. You know, that's enough. I was done. And so I stepped away, but I've seen a lot of death, okay? I've never, ever, ever once encountered a person on their deathbed that says, man, I wish I just had earned more money. Never. I've met a lot of people that would trade everything they had for, you know, two more seconds, you know? So understand the value of money. Sorry, this stuff actually affects me pretty heavy, so. All right. So it's important. So that exchange rate, what happens when you trade your time for money or your money for time, that balance will determine your contentment in life, okay? Your contentment. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we use the phrase time is what? Time is money. We need to reverse that immediately. Your mind has to reverse that immediately, okay? It's not time is money. It's got to be flipped, because that assumes, saying it that way assumes that money is the more important of the two, okay? But really, contentment is the ultimate financial goal, okay? I coach a lot of discontented millionaires. I have this farm in Pickens, South Carolina. It's up in the mountains. Most of the people can't get phone reception. A lot of my friends are multimillionaire IT people, stressed out, always working, all this kind of stuff. I can't tell you how many times they call me up and say, Steve, can I come to your we've got this little, like, it's like a shed, it's a shack, okay? That's just, there's no clock in it, there's nothing. It's where I actually do my coaching and stuff like that. There's like, can I just bug out of Greenville and get away from everybody and just, I just need to get out of here, you know? And they're so discontent and stressed out. You know, contentment is super important. And that, again, is going to be determined by your balance of time and money. How much are you working one for the other? And what I hope we come away with is the idea that contentment is not a number. It encompasses a great many things. And contentment really starts with thankfulness, okay? That's going to be the key to it. I heard it mentioned a couple of times here on this commission breath. Got it right? Commission breath? Okay. If you want to not have commission breath, you know, desperate halitosis, whatever you want to call it, start with thankfulness. Start to look at what you have and be thankful for that. If you start there, that is the direct precursor to contentment. Because our discontentment comes from when we look at somebody else. There's always going to be somebody that's got way more than we do. And there's always somebody that has way less than we do. I have a weird background because my wife and I have spent so much time, decades, in foreign missions, doing all kinds of stuff. It's probably in my bio, but we started an agency called Hydro Missions International, does water projects all over the world. So where we go are places that they don't have water. You can imagine they're pretty destitute, right? Yeah. So you go to those places, and we did this for decades, back and forth between places where they don't earn $1 a day. We've been to those places where they are trying to figure out how we got there from that little bird in the sky, because they've never gotten close enough to an airplane to appreciate how it can hold people. They just think it's this weird bird. You know, they'll never get on a plane, they'll never own a car, they'll never, all that stuff. So we spend that time, and then I come back to the US where the majority of my friends are multimillionaires. I don't have a financial compass. That got wrecked a long time ago. When I get back here, I go, man, I'm just not where I should be. Discontentment. I go over there, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'm a king. I'm a wealthy man. All of us in this room, I can tell you, globally speaking, we are incredibly wealthy. All right? So start with thankfulness first. Be thankful for what you have. You're all drinking water. I bet none of you, I'm probably gonna not have to treat a single one of you for some kind of weird, funky amoeba from that water. Okay? So, so that's a good thing, right? Yay, us. Yeah. Yeah. So start with thankfulness, because that's gonna help with your contentment, you know? So there's an unfortunate mindset that happens as far as the thankfulness goes. I'll start by, have any of you heard of this happiness quotient study? You've heard of it? Anybody else? Okay, you've heard of it. This is a while back. The numbers have changed a little bit. It started with 75K for a family of 4. I think now it's about 100, something like that. But basically it goes like this, that they did a big survey of people's happiness or their contentment, whatever, related to how much money they made, okay? And essentially, after $100,000 for a family of 4, it plateaus. Because at that point, pretty much all your needs are met. Most of your wants are met. But then it's just like, well, yeah, I got a car, but do you really need like a car that's gonna like, blow your nose for you? You know what I mean? Like after a while, like the features are just sort of like, yeah, okay, like, ooh, well my seat heats up by 1 degree increments. Well, I have one that heats up by half a degree. Like, okay, it's a little nicer, but is it really making your happiness go up any? And so this happiness quotient, we can all end up like Howard Hughes. If you guys are familiar, I know you're probably familiar because you guys are kind of up on those old things. Howard Hughes, anybody not know who Howard Hughes was? Okay, all right. Howard Hughes was at one time the wealthiest man in the world. Okay, airline stuff and all kinds of stuff. Wealthiest man in the world. He ended up, yeah. So at the peak of his success, you're talking about, he was the Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk of the day, okay? They asked him, Howard, you're on top of the world. How much is enough? You know what his answer was? Just a little more. Just a little more. And that's not a mindset reserved for the wealthy, and it's not a mindset reserved for the poor. It's a mindset reserved for the discontent. So try to get out of that just a little more, and start getting into the habit of evaluating where you are, not compared to other people, but compared to your own situation. Okay? Because that's where discontentment comes in, is when we set a comparison to somebody that's better than, doing better, whatever, bigger, better, faster, more. Well, they've got 2 Ferraris in their driveway, all that kind of stuff, right? So start to look at your own situation and be thankful for what you have. I bet every one of us in this room could look back at a time when we probably didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. My wife and I were just talking about that the other day. We've got this big farm, we've got this big agritourism business going, and man, I remember being in college, living in this little rat apartment, $250 a month rent, no utilities, and barely making it, eating ramen noodles. Now it's like, how do we get all this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing, though, to see really how far you've come, and you need to look at that. It's a good thing to take stock, to take an evaluation every once in a while of your life and look back at where you've come from. Because I can tell already, I mean, where we've come from, we've all progressed, okay? We're all blessed. So, tracking with me so far? Okay. Is it sinking in a little bit, I hope? Okay. All right. So, as far as contentment goes, I want you to think in your mind, what's your number? What's your number? What's your just a little more? Right? What's your just a little more? Like, if I had X amount, whether it's annual, whether it's total in the bank, what's your number? My question, my challenge to us is, are you going to stick there? Or are you going to keep moving the goalpost? And I'm not talking about not earning more than that, because I believe in wealth. I believe in wealth generation. I think that's a gift from God. But what I'm talking about is, what are you going to do with the surplus? You know, are you just going to keep on elevating your lifestyle? Or are you going to say, I'm content here, and now I've been blessed with this surplus that I can now use to change the world, right? That I can use to build a legacy, right? Does that make sense? Because the temptation and the pitfall is to say, well, I said this amount. Now I'm here. It's this amount, you know? And then all that change the world stuff that we hopefully came out of tonight or this evening thinking about kind of just goes away. And then your 30 years that you thought you had becomes 20, becomes 10, becomes 0. And you did nothing with it. So choose the path you want. You know, what are you going to be remembered for? Are you going to remember for dynamite or the Peace Prize? Right? One or the other. So, questions, comments so far? Okay.
Steve, what do you, when you say, you know, where you spend your life, what will you be?
Yeah.
How will you be remembered? What your, you know, I guess the second one you gave us was legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you think if there's somebody here that is not sure about that path? How do you determine?
How do you determine what you
In other words, I laid out something today that for me, God made crystal clear.
Yeah.
There could be some, though, that are saying, I'm not sure what that particular, for this person as an individual.
Okay. So, I would say talk. Talk to people that are close to you, talk to people that know you, that know how you are and who you are. I don't have kids, but who in the room does?
I got enough for you both.
I don't want your kids. All right. So here's the thing. Every parent I've ever talked to, and tell me if I'm wrong, okay, but so far I have not been proven wrong on this. Every parent will say, especially if they have more than 2 kids, I didn't realize there could be 3 opposites. Am I right? Right? Like, we had the one kid and they were like perfect, and then God thought it would be funny to give us a second kid that was like this, and then we're like, okay, well, we got everything covered, and then the third one comes along and you're like, what the heck? You know, they're totally different. And if you're engaged with your kids, if you pay attention, you'll know from an early age, like, oh yeah, they have a propensity for this. This kid just, I mean, they need to be a vet. They just love animals. They're like this little Dr. Doolittle, you know, or that kid is always doing the hustle. You know, he's always got something going. This kid's going to be an entrepreneur, like that kind of stuff. So talk to the people that know you well. Talk to your parents if you still have access to them, you know, to bounce those things off and to say, you know, hey, let's have an honest conversation of what my propensities are, what my gifts and talents are, what my passion is. So and the other thing is get a coach, you know. There are coaches around. I'm happy to do it too. And not a shameless plug or anything like that, but like, so one of the things I do when I coach people, I have a very simple coaching strategy. It requires a ton of listening. It hurts my brain every session. But I call it wings and boat anchors. And you can do it with yourself. And actually in that book, All In Again, there's a chapter on there on my favorite coaching questions. So, you know, just cut myself out of a job, you know. You can just go ahead and go through that list. But one of my favorite things, I call it wings and boat anchors. And it kind of goes like this. I listen very intently to see what things that the client is telling me that I can hear in their voice, you can see in their body language, everything. The stuff that energizes them, that gives them wings, and then the stuff that drags them down. And it's not what you'd think it would be. I remember this one coaching session that I had with a guy who was a pastor of a mega church, okay? So really high up, senior pastor, all this stuff, talking with him. He's miserable. He's telling me about all the great things that he's been doing, all the great things that his church has done, all these amazing ministries, helping the world, blah, 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 blah. I could just hear it in his voice just sucking him down, right? So I finally said, hey, tell me about how this all started. Well, back in the day, I was a youth pastor, and he started just going on and on about how he loved working with youth, and this was great, and this is what got him into ministry. And at the end of that session, it was very clear, you're in the wrong job. You need to be a youth pastor. Talking pay cut, talking demotion, at least, in his mind. You've been in the pastor tract, imagine going from senior pastor of megachurch to youth pastor, right? At some hillbilly church in Pickens or something, right? Right? But you could tell that was his passion. That was his passion. And that's the kind of stuff that you really need to be about. That's what you need to be spending your life about. Working for money is terrible. Right? All right. Any other questions, comments before we get into? Yes. Surgical nurse for 33 years. Lost count after 20,000 surgeries. Yep. So I still have a quick little time. So side note, I left it a year ago, and I thought I'd have these, some of the people at breakfast heard this. I thought I would have nightmares about it, with trauma call and stuff like that. And it wasn't until January, which was over a year out, this past January, that I had my first dream about surgery. And we were doing an open gallbladder surgery or appendix, I can't remember exactly which, in the checkout aisle of the Walmart and Travelers Rest. Yep, and it was very specific. We were in the Walmart Travelers Rest checkout aisle, and people kept scanning vegetables and sticking them on my back table. And some lady had these tomatoes. I remember tomatoes and a head of broccoli, and the tomatoes really bothered me. You just scan the tomato and put it on my table, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. And then I woke up. So that was my big dream, nightmare, whatever. Well, not too bad. I think I came out pretty unscathed, considering. So anyway, that's what I did.
So when you say you're a serial entrepreneur,
Yeah, too many things to list.
so anything you like?
Yeah, so we're about to jump into that part, which is,
Steve, I remember you had,
oh,
that was at the beginning of All In Again, right?
so All In Again is, so that, yeah.
That's right, it is the email, yeah.
Yeah. So that part, All In Again, came from a friend of mine because he'd seen me go through many, many entrepreneurial ventures. And I'm about to talk about entrepreneurs and their mindset, because one of the things I want to challenge you to is, if you aren't necessarily an entrepreneur but want to change the world, they're the ones that are of that ilk. And you can partner with them. Okay, and we'll talk about this in just a second. But the title All In Again is because I was sitting down with my buddy Brett. I said, I'm writing this book. I think I'm going to call it All In Again. And he said, well, don't you mean all in? And he said, don't you mean all in again? Because I've seen you pony up your life savings like 12 times now. Okay? And it's just, that's what the serial entrepreneurial part is. It's just, and I'm going to explain that a little bit too, because like I said, and maybe this is a good time to get into that section, not everybody who is called an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. And not everybody who thinks they're an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. And that's okay. Most people, in fact, most of us in this room are not, okay? But that's all right. What I'm trying to do is delineate a little bit of a difference so that you don't run into pitfalls, because what you have access to is somebody that, like I said, don't ask me about business, okay? Don't take a whole lot of money advice from me. That's what these guys are all for. But on the entrepreneurial side, absolutely. 100%, all in again, a zillion times. And that's kind of where it starts, okay? So is there a difference between an entrepreneur and a businessman? Let me throw out a name. You'll recognize it probably. Elon Musk. Anybody not heard of Elon Musk? Okay. Is he a good entrepreneur? Is he an entrepreneur? Is he a good businessman? Okay. I would say no. Elon Musk lost $25 billion on Twitter in 1 year. He lost 41 billion on Tesla in just 2 weeks. He lost more money in 2 weeks than anyone has ever in the planet of the history of the world. So the question again, Elon Musk, is he an entrepreneur? Is he a businessman? No. And he would tell you that as well. And the reason I say that is because I'm like a discount Elon Musk. Okay? So I know his brainwaves and his autistic tendencies, should I say, very, very well. Whereas a guy like Jeff Bezos, I would say, is reverse. Okay? And they go back and forth between who's the richest in the world. But they're two very different people. And they're two very different sets. So I kind of want to give you an idea of this because you guys, as you generate your wealth, I would encourage you that if you want to change the world, but you're not really an entrepreneur, that's okay. Look for one to partner with. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Because we talk about, generational wealth and building all these things. Sometimes leaving stuff to your kids is not the best. You'll see a lot of these guys who are super wealthy not leaving anything to their kids. Because my kid's an idiot, or whatever. Like, I'll put it in terms of Scripture. Solomon would say, "Who's to say that your son is a wise man or a fool?" Right? So while you have control of your money, you're responsible for doing something with it. Okay? Don't just chalk it up to, well, I'm building this big thing to give to my kids. Anybody been to the Biltmore estate? Anybody know the history of the Vanderbilts? One of the wealthiest families in the entire world, and just broke. Gone. Used to be. Exactly. Now they give tours of the Biltmore house, bragging about how they had indoor plumbing. Be thankful for what you have. I bet all y'all have indoor plumbing. Right? You don't have to be a Vanderbilt for that. Okay? So, as you look to change the world, if you're not of that ilk, and I'll explain what an entrepreneur truly is here in just a second, you can always partner with one and do that by proxy, and it's just as meaningful and just as valuable. And I'm not saying me, okay? I'm not looking for you guys to give me money. So entrepreneurialism, here's the difference. It's all about risk. I get interviewed a lot, the press, and they always ask about entrepreneurialism. What does that mean? It's about risk. Here's the definition, the dictionary definition of an entrepreneur. Quote, an entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. Okay? That's an entrepreneur. If you want the one word definition, it's risk. Risk, and I'm working on a TED Talk for this, risk, by its nature, implies the very real, not possibility, but probability of failure. Otherwise, it is not risk. Okay? And I deal with a lot of financial people all the time that talk about, high risk, all this stuff. And then there's all these nets underneath. Risk is the guy that does the tightrope across the Grand Canyon with no net in high winds. Okay? If that makes you squirm to hear that you're probably going to fail and probably going to lose everything, you're probably not an entrepreneur. And that's okay. But I want to give you a very acute insight into the mindset of the demented. Okay? Should you choose to partner with one? Okay? Because it's important for you to know this. So, this is, we were talking about just the financial aspect of Wellington and all that, right? And the idea is to build wealth with essentially not a ton of risk. Am I right? It's a generator. You're not expecting to lose it all, right? You guys are not here going, I want to lose all my money, right? I don't see any of that, right? It's how to make more.
No speculation.
No speculation. Okay. Entrepreneurs are not like that. We are not like that at all. We are high risk individuals. And here's the problem. We have a phrase in our culture, high risk, high reward. Okay? High risk, high reward. It's not how an entrepreneur thinks. We think in terms of high risk, high value. High risk, high value. Has nothing to do with the return. We'll talk about the last part of this is reevaluating or rethinking return on investment. Entrepreneurs don't look at things in terms of financial reimbursement. It happens. It happens. We look at things as intrinsic value. Really won't change the world. Back to Elon Musk. I've heard many interviews with him, and I absolutely know he's telling the truth about it. When he started SpaceX, he did it because he believed in the mission, and he would have risked it all. He did risk it all. He said, I would have lost all my billions and lived in my in-laws' basement to give it a shot. They were one launch failure away from complete and utter bankruptcy. Okay? Again, that's an entrepreneur. That's what we do. High risk. And it's not for the money. It's because we really, truly believe we can change the world. If you ever, you can jot this. I told you only one note takeaway, but jot this down. Look it up sometime. It's called Here's to the Crazy Ones. Here's to the Crazy Ones. And actually, I think it's in the book All In Again. I think I went ahead, because it's my favorite quote. It basically, I'm not going to spoil it for you. Just look it up. Here's to the Crazy Ones. Sometimes attributed to Steve Jobs. It wasn't him. He just stole it. That's okay. But check it out. It'll be inspirational. Basically ends up, spoiler alert, says, because the ones crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. Yeah, that's the deal. So, again, if risk and the thought of the probability of losing it all makes you squirm, you're probably not an entrepreneur, but that's okay. If your gift and passion is to make money to do things with it, and you don't know how to do things with it or whatever, find somebody that does. Be a complementary bandwidth to it. Because in general, entrepreneurs don't think about money the same way business people do. I'm like I said, I'm not your business guy. We don't think about money in the same ways. We think of it only as a tool, literally only as a tool, like a wrench or a hammer or whatever, and some jobs just require a really big hammer, And so we look at money as we don't use it to buy things. We use it to build things. In particular, we use it to build the things that we need to do the things we feel are important to do. That's all it is to us. That's it. It's just a tool. So that I want you to just understand. I'm not asking anybody to be an entrepreneur. I'm just wanting you to understand the mindset while you've got one, while you've got a weird specimen in front of you in the room. Okay? When we talk about ROI, return on investment, if you want to shrivel up and kill an entrepreneur, start asking them about ROI. of one of their ideas, right? Well, what's the return? Like we're just like, the return is to do something awesome. You know, that's the return, right? That's the return. And it is so not financial, okay? It is so not financial. And again, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but the reality is that true entrepreneurs hate talking about money and hate asking about it or asking for it. That's how you'll know you've probably gotten a good one that's not trying to hustle you for things, is when they're like, God, I hate asking, but if we're going to build the rocket, I need money, and I hate asking, right? That's how it is. So if you guys have a ton of money, you know, come find an entrepreneur. So does that make sense so far? Does that give you a little bit of insight into the difference? Because they're not the same. They're not the same. And it's okay. Like, don't think, too, just that you started a business that it makes you an entrepreneur. Again, it all has to do with you're running headlong into risk, because that's who you are as a person. I know Ed knows. You know, we've been talking quite a bit. You know, it's that whole, you know, I love watching Formula One. Anybody a Formula One fan at all? Not too many. Well, Formula One, I mean, talk about a great job. Like the ultimate job would be a Formula One driver, right? We're gonna pay you $50 million a year to drive the fastest vehicle ever made on the planet as fast as you can, and if you wreck it, don't worry about it. Awesome. You know? But how do you build the fastest car in the world? Nope. You build the fastest car in the world by wrecking a lot of cars. Because the only way you know where the end is, where the edge is to push past it. That's it. That's it. You don't know where the edge is until you go past it. Welcome to the realm of the entrepreneur. We break things. That's how we do it. You know, to find and push and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, interesting. So, one other thing, if you ever do partner with an entrepreneur, there are only two options when something is failing for us. Shoot it or double down. Shoot it or double down. And that's a really hard thing for people that are not of the mindset to understand. Because what you'll think of us is that we're fickle or flighty, we have a short attention span, we don't do this, don't do that. Nothing could be farther from the truth. One of the questions that I'm often asked, I don't interview for these positions anymore, but when I was interviewing a lot for management, they'd ask me to describe myself in one word. You ever do that? Actually, I'm going to do that with you guys. I'll just do like random. All right. One word. Describe yourself in one word now that you have your mouth full. I'd be a good waiter.
Determined.
Determined. All right.
Staying above ground.
That's not one word, but anyway, we'll take it. How about you?
Daring.
Daring. Okay. How about you? Mm-hmm.
Fit.
Okay. All right.
Caring.
Both of you. I'll take both of you.
Caring.
Caring. Driven. All right. You? One word. Driven. Okay. You?
Committed.
Committed. Let's go.
Redemption.
Okay. All right. If you ask me my one word, it's surgical. There you go. Surgical. And yeah, a little sociopathic, I know. Fair enough. But that's how it is. And a lot of entrepreneurs are very much surgical. When we're in surgery, we have a saying in the operating room, no thinking allowed in the OR. You like that? That your surgeon has that mantra? No thinking allowed in the OR. Because all the thinking should have been done before you set foot in the room. because in that environment, it's very hard to explain what happens in surgery when it hits the fan, okay? But there's a chain reaction of things that happens, and back to the whole thing like Ed was talking about, our training, that's what we're relying on. We rely on the fact that for the most part, 99.9% of the time, we've been trained to make the correct decision very quickly and very decisively, because no decision is a decision to die, right? So what happens is if it goes sideways for whatever reason, you went in with plan A, didn't work, go to plan B, plan C, plan D, until there are no more plans left, or as we say, all bleeding stops eventually.
That'd be reactive.
Not reactive at all. It's decisive. It's just decisive. It is a fast, algorithmic assessment of the situation and the most probable outcome, and you do it. And that's kind of how we look at different things. If an entrepreneur is faced with any kind of failure, okay, that's happening, is this salvageable? Can there be algorithms that will work? Or is this, call the code, we're done here, right? And so that's why it's hard sometimes for people to kind of be like, well, it was kind of eking along, you could have, it was dead. We just took it out back and shot it, you know? And that's not being flighty. So don't confuse the two. It's just being very, very decisive. And I say that because a lot of people have problems with that. I've been married now for 27 years. He's met Jen. Jen's awesome. She's so much better than me. I got a good one. Marry up, that's for sure. Marry up. But that was really hard for her at first, because it was kind of like, well, you said you were going to do this, and now we're doing this. I was like, yeah, because that didn't work, you know. And now she gets it. You know, she just rolls her eyes. Just go, here we go again. I'm going to hang on, you know, for another round. But anyway, that's our strategy basically. Is we either kill it or we double down. So don't let that surprise you. So any questions or any comments about the mindset of entrepreneurs in case you end up partnering with one and get super frustrated because they're basically doing things without any concern whatsoever to your money?
That's a raw statement.
It's a raw statement, but it's true. That's true. It's just how it is. So just be aware. That's all I'm saying. Is like, you know, have all your contracts and stuff set up, have your buffer zones, risk what you can afford to lose. Okay? Risk what you can afford to lose. All right. So, again, back to the title of this presentation. It was Purposeful Wealth, Entrepreneurialism, and Rethinking ROI. Everybody knows what ROI is, right? Do I have to explain that? Return on investment, the thing that makes me cringe. All right. So let me ask you this question. Does ROI always have to be financial? Anybody think ROI always has to be financial? Okay. So if it doesn't always have to be financial, how do you evaluate ROI? Yeah, but worth. Okay, that worth implies an evaluation. So what's the criteria for worthiness?
That has to do with your vision on the front end.
Okay. Anybody else?
You guys will set that up yourself.
Okay.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. Okay.
Return on impact.
Okay. Eternal impact, you said?
Impact.
Impact. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you know, this isn't a question that I actually can answer for you. Because we all know that it's not always financial. But the evaluation of return on value is going to be subjective, right? Any of these art pieces resonate with you? I don't know, you know, maybe, maybe not. But you think of art, you know. I mean, talk about lame, right? If somebody just buys art because it's an investment. It's like, it's the ugliest thing in the world hanging on my wall, but doggone it, it's going to go up in value. Like, what the heck? You know, that's stupid. Anyway, so it's not quantitative, it's qualitative. Again, I know a lot of you guys share the same faith that I do. At least if you haven't, you've probably heard in the Gospels, the woman with the alabaster vial. Familiar with that? Anybody not familiar with that? Okay, there you go. It was like a year's salary, right? What'd she do with it? Broke it, poured it out, right? Was there any financial return? That was a huge investment, huge investment. So what was the ROI? Yeah, I mean, you can't quantify that. And I would submit to you that all the money that we have, eventually, this will be a stretch, okay? But think about it, bear with me. All the money that we have eventually will go to something that does not generate a financial return, right? Whether it's something that's consumed, even your land, like I own a farm, right? That really doesn't have a financial return until I sell it. Not really, you know? But again, back to the Vanderbilts, massive wealth. My wife, her father owns, they have a 3,000 acre cattle farm in Iowa, okay? It's now third or so generation. None of the kids want to run a farm. It's owned by the three brothers. What do you think's going to happen? It's realistic. What do you think's going to happen? Yeah. As soon as it goes to the kids, right? So money has a way of diluting out. Which is why I said again, while it's under your control, you're responsible for how you use it to make a difference. And you all said that you guys matter, right? So if you believe it, use your resources to live it out. But eventually, it'll all go towards something that doesn't necessarily generate a financial return. I mean, that's a tough one to think about, but it's true. So where does that leave you? Well, find a cause, a purpose, a person, whatever, to invest in, right? And I'm talking about with your surplus. Take care of your financial needs, all that stuff. Build wealth. Use the tools that you've got. But set that target number for where your life is content, and don't move the goalpost. Use the rest to do something great. And if it's not you, then partner with people that are too busy changing the world to be worried about money, right? Because there are those people. And I would actually say that financial stuff is the easy part. You know, and I'm not saying give it all away. Like that's, you know, I think we're all clear on that we're good with wealth and all that kind of stuff. But let's face it, writing a check is often the easier part. You want to support an orphanage in, you know, Rwanda or wherever? Writing a check is a lot easier than actually being the teacher that gives their life for the next, you know, decade living in it to do it. But they love doing it, and if you love doing it, do it. Like I said, you can partner together. You can find the people with the passion that are so driven with the passion of their purpose that the money part is a distraction. And if you are gifted and talented in being a banking generator, you know, there's nothing wrong with partnering with those people. Does that make sense? The world needs both, you know. We can't do it all. Everybody can't do it all. So does this so far dovetail at all with the stuff that you're learning? Okay. All right. So a couple of tips, and I'll leave you with this. and then we'll get out of here at 5. You like that? Not even 5:15. So we spent many, many decades, not many, 2+, in the mission field and dealing with charitable organizations. We've seen all kinds of things. Been to 40 different countries. Seen all kinds of manner of good and bad and ugly, you know, even in the mission field and even with people that are being charitable and all that kind of stuff. Do your due diligence, okay? There's a lot of stuff that you can throw money at. And look, just because it's a 501c3 doesn't mean anything, okay? I would suggest looking for people, again, that you're passionate about, that you know, to just work with, right? Don't just be like, well, I want to give and I need my tax write-off for the year. So I'll scribble it out to a 501c3. You need to be more diligent than that, okay? So here's a little question for you, some tips and questions. If you had $1 million to give away, is it better to give $1 to 1 million people, or 100,000 to 10, or 1 million to 1? I can't answer the question for you, okay? I can't answer the question for you. But when you look at doing those kind of things, if the money's going somewhere other than what you are in total control of, you know, you're giving it and partnering with whatever, just think about where it will make a difference. Anybody watch Shark Tank? A lot of Shark Tank watchers. So, you know, one of the things that will sometimes happen is they'll say, well, my problem with your proposal is that you're not asking for enough money, right? Like, because they know, and you guys, because you're financially savvy, would know, well, shoot, if I give you 50,000 or do this, it's going to take you to here, but you won't be able to build the infrastructure to do that, and you're still going to be crippled. But if I did 75, it pushes you over, right? It requires some due diligence, but you got to kind of evaluate each situation as it comes to see what is enough that, you know, makes the difference. Does that make sense? That tips the scale. So hand in hand with that, and this is one that's really, really hard, is don't overgive. Don't disincentivize by giving too much. Because what happens invariably is that the people that are doing the world-changing stuff have the entrepreneurial mindset. And remember I said it's all about what's the word for entrepreneurialism? What's synonymous with entrepreneurs? Risk. Okay, risk. If you take away the risk, you take away the drive. Okay? You take away the drive. And so one of the things that we found when we were doing our water well projects, in the early days, there were a lot of groups that would come in, they'd fund everything. Hey, look at this. They take their pictures, they go back to their donors, look at what great things we did. They didn't pay a dime, all of that. Follow up a year later, the well is broken, they're back down in the river, scooping stuff from the trash. Why? Because they didn't have any skin in the game. And so when you give to things, make sure that you keep the right amount of skin in the game. Because if you don't have any skin in the game, there's no incentive, and there's no ownership, and there's no, you know, drive to keep up and make it sustainable. At the same time, if the risk is lethal, you know, that's the part that you can take out. So like we have, as part of our tea company, we've got this, it's called the Connectivity Fund. Okay, so basically it's a fund that uses that money to help start up tea farms in third world countries and stuff. But anyway, each one of those is unique because for some, it might be, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to pay for the equipment that you need, but we're not going to pay any salaries, right? Or for others, it might be, well, we can do X, Y, and Z, but they're going to have to contribute X, Y, and Z, because otherwise we know it's not sustainable. So just kind of keep that in mind. Just a little tip for good giving, okay? Yeah, so that's kind of important. So don't disincentivize it. So that's kind of it. I really, my point in talking to you tonight was to kind of just churn some thoughts in your mind about how you're going to make a difference in the world with the surplus that you're blessed with. Because presumably, if all of this stuff works out, you're going to have a surplus. So what you do with it matters because you matter in the world. It's important. And I'm going to leave you with this. Because you have a very short window to make a difference. And as we talk about the money stuff, I want to leave you with, I call it the Christian entrepreneur's prayer. But it could just be the entrepreneur's prayer. It's something that my wife and I pray about all the time, and I'll leave you with this. We always pray, God, let me always be content and never satisfied. We pray that all the time. Help me be content, always and never satisfied. Because the contentment is where your thankfulness is and all of that. That's really going to be what you strive for in all of your financial gain is contentment. Don't be Howard Hughes. Don't be the one that's saying just a little more, just a little more, just a little more, and then your life is gone and meaningless. Be content. But the never satisfied is the part that means it's okay and it's a good thing to always be driving forward. Higher, more, better. Right? But in that mindset of contentment. Does that make sense? That's it.